Tatsunoko vs. Capcom has always been a game that I hold very closely to the heart. Pretty much everyone who knows me in the FGC knows that I've been a competitor and an advocate for the world of TVC. I've been playing the game since day one, and I've traveled to many tournaments over the years. And even though the game has the benefit of having the illustrious title of Capcom in it, it still has a very niche audience when it comes to the competitive side of the community. I'm talking like very small, which is why it still comes to no surprise to me that people still don't know that Tatsunoko vs. Capcom has two different versions of the game. I'm of course talking about Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars, in which the latter is what I play and is the version that is taken more seriously. The original version, which I will henceforth continue to call CGoH, was a heaping, broken mess of a fighting game, and honestly, I don't find it to be any fun at all. So I still find it sort of awkward when someone from the FGC finds a CGoH arcade cabinet out in the wild, sends me a picture, and says, "Hey, look what they got at round 1 or wherever, and this reminded me of you." And I'm thinking like, I don't play that one sucks. I don't say that aloud, of course, but it's what I'm thinking. And no offense to the fans of CGoH, that version is the only one that got an arcade release, and I hate that the good version didn't. CGoH is still played, and that definitely creates a divide in the already small TVC scene, but there's no doubting that CGoH is definitely Kusoge. So, with that in mind, I wanted to create this video as an analysis and comparison of the two versions of TVC, definitely inspired by the likes of other FGC historians such as Guile Winquote and Babe Ruthless. I'll be touching briefly upon the history and release, but I want to try to focus more on differentiating the two and how not mix them up. UAS, the awesome version, is like Super Turbo, and CGoH is closer to Rainbow Edition, but more stupid. I can't emphasize it enough, that game sucks. So let's start out with the logo. Besides the subtitle change at the bottom of the logo in English, the CGoH version has Tatsunoko written out in katakana, along with their signature seahorse logo. The UAS version omits this as well as any reference to it within the game. Although the seahorse has been a long-time representation of the production company, it's curious as to why it's been fully removed. My guess is that it's one of those changes made because the seahorse logo didn't look fierce or tough for Western audiences. And since CGoH was the initial release, they took the time to edit out the logo for UAS as one of the many changes that was made. Let's talk about the release for a bit. Earlier I mentioned that there were two versions of TVC. And while this is still technically true, the CGoH arcade release was slightly different than the one on home console. The arcade version started getting public beta tests out in July of 2008. They even had one present at EVO of that year. I remember being pretty excited, but also cringing at everyone playing Alex, looping his stun gun headbutt with ridiculous damage, and Super still building meter during animation. Once the final build released later in December, the Wii version released exclusively to Japan, along with 4 additional characters not present in the arcade release. Beautiful Joe, Saki, Ipatsuman, and Hakushon Daimo. These characters are super cool and are great additions, but since they weren't included in the arcade release, the version prominently played in Japan, they were not taken too seriously and haven't seen much play over the years. However, this all changed very recently in a brand new discovery. It seems that these characters have been hiding on the arcade board all along, which is pretty huge. It took the public almost 16 years to discover the unlock code. Even Neo G, the fighting game design god, was basically like, "I don't know why we never told anyone. Lol." Better late than never, I guess. And even though I don't play that version, it's pretty exciting seeing as they could finally explore the full potential of those characters without any hesitation. The world pretty much accepted that this game would be a Japanese exclusive. However, by some licensing miracle, Capcom announced in September of 2009 that TVC would be getting an update and would release in Japan and internationally. Ultimate All-Stars released in January of 2010, along with a whole slew of new content, and the game pretty much getting an overhaul as far as balance changes. On the surface, it doesn't seem like much, but when playing the game, you can definitely tell that the developers learned from their mistakes. I'll touch more on the gameplay in a bit, but first let's look at some of the visual differences between the home releases. When starting up the game, CGoH hits us with a fully animated, hand-drawn 2D anime intro. It's pretty awesome to look at, and I could never get over how colorful and stimulating it is to see all of its flashiness and the two universes colliding. This intro is still viewable in the UAS release, but it's only an unlockable bonus video, as the actual intro is quite different. The UAS version hits us with mostly character portraits and some in-game footage, but it only contains some snippets of the anime intro from CGoH. Although, this actually isn't a downgrade. An awesome addition is the inclusion of some of the sketch art-like storyboard elements. It's so cool seeing it jump back and forth between the finished anime and the line drawings, which give off the same vibes as the Street Fighter Third Strike intro. Included with some of the portraits are quotes that give us a little insight to the character's background or personality, taken directly from the character win quotes in arcade mode. Some of the notable ones include Ken the Eagle asking Ryu to join the G-Force, and the PTX pilot saying, "This is a perfectly balanced VS." And no, that is not talking about this game in the Versus series. PTX is a vital suit from the underrated Capcom series Lost Planet. We also get a new remix of the original CGoH theme, complete with new English lyrics. Anna Golston and James C. Wilson perform Across the Border, and it's pretty catchy. Overall, they're both great presentations of the game, and I can't really judge which one I find better. Now, when getting into the main menu, this is a part that was sadly cut out for UAS, but added a bit more character to the presentation for CGoH. We are randomly greeted by one of the 3 members of the Doronbo gang, helping the players navigate through the menu. Each character has a unique way of saying each selection, along with some snarky remarks.
体力がなくなるまで戦い続けるでまんねん。ワイのようなタウガイを目指すでまんねん。いわゆるミニゲームが遊べます。サクッと遊んで大量ポイントをゲットよん。パンパカパーン、本日の山場。
ゲームをクリアするスピードを競うんだよ。仕事は早ければ早いほどいいってもんだよ。さあ、やっておしまい。
The Doronbo gang is taken out for UAS, understandably so, since they would probably have to record new lines or even hire a new English voice cast. But we know that isn't necessary, and the voice actors remain the same, along with the new voices for the additional characters.
What the hell?
When getting into the character selection screen, there are quite a few changes, so let's explore them in the training mode. We start out by selecting the stage, so let's go ahead and select the training stage. There is no training stage in CGoH. Yep, the most basic of basic stages didn't exist in TVC until UAS. It was added along with the Willamette Mall and the Orbital Ring stage.
Select your heroes.
The character icons are different as well. CGoH displays them more like a traditional character selection screen, having Tatsunoko cast on the left and Capcom cast on the right. This is expanded when the previously mentioned secret characters are unlocked.
Select your heroes.
UAS is remodeled with a rotating gear-like structure, allowing the movement to only be left and right. A couple of reasons why they may have made this change. The first is believed that they did this to make the amount of unlockable characters remain ambiguous, as you can't see where the character slots end. But I believe the change was made because the Wii version seemed to have some frame rate issues when there was too much going on the screen. Now let's get into the game interface. If you look at the life bars, you'll see that CGoH has solid yellow lines and the character icons are depicted in a small, flat polygon shape. The super meter has the number displayed in somewhat of a round bubble. UAS changes the interface with a more colorful life bar, changing into gradients of blue, green, and yellow. The super meter has different gradients as well. Both the character portraits and the super meter are more futuristic looking now. They're sharper polygons that look sort of like Alienware. The beta of UAS actually had a slightly different look, which I used to find pretty interesting. They're slightly bigger icons and have a much more boxier look, having been inverted to point towards the center of the screen. Seems they ended up not liking this look during production. Along with all the cosmetic changes, the sounds and soundtrack have changed as well. But the voice announcer is changed for the better? I don't know. I guess he sounds a little bit more clearer compared to CGoH, but it still sounds very gibberish to me.
Select your heroes. Select your heroes. Charlie. Alex. You. Go to the right town. Ivan. Ready? Fight!
Now, one of the big things of CGoH that fans both loved and found kind of annoying is the inclusion of character-specific themes. Now, I know many Versus series games have had them in the past, but not only does CGoH contain renditions of licensed Tatsunoko intro themes, but the battle music changes the moment a character jumps on screen. And I don't mean just when the point character dies and the partner comes in. I mean the theme still changes every time someone tags in and out. It's pretty cool that they got the actual themes for each character, but it's such a groove breaker whenever the battle goes to silent and the next theme has to load up, just for it to be broken again the next time someone switches out. The UAS version takes out the character-specific themes, but it's fairly certain that the anime intro themes would have had licensing issues. But the UAS soundtrack is nothing to sneeze at. Each stage now has a dedicated theme, and most of them are quite good. Everyone seems to love the orbital ring stage especially. Now, this isn't a difference in the CGoH version, but now's a better time than any to mention it. Something that most fans know about, and is one of the only changes between the Japanese and the localized version of UAS, is the new theme for the training stage. Even though this beat is already a banger, the Japanese version seemed to have rap lyrics that were taken out. Not sure the reason why they were taken out, but they're both terrible yet awesome at the same time. I highly recommend you go check out the full track, along with most of the themes from UAS. Now let's finally talk about the gameplay, and what makes the UAS version really shine. Like I mentioned earlier, the game had a huge overhaul, and the balance changes made characters go from useless to fun and unique. I'll mostly focus on the system mechanics rather than character specifics, but there are definitely some noteworthy ones, and some I actually enjoy more in CGoH. Let's start out by covering some of the biggest blunders that CGoH had. A fairly known failure was the aspect ratio changing the wall spacing. Within the Wii system settings itself, some combos would act differently depending on if you had your console set to 4:3 or 16:9. I don't know of any other Wii game being affected by this issue, but it pretty much forced the community back then to select a standard for competition. UAS no longer had to deal with this, so enjoy widescreen all you want. Another infamous problem was with one of my mains, Yatterman 1. CGoH had less character palettes to choose from, having only 2 for each character on the Tatsunoko side and 3 for Capcom. For Yatterman's sake, he has a super where he summons his robot. The default white color would summon Yatterwan, the dog, and the purple alternate would summon Yatter Pelican. I see what they are trying to do creatively, having the variety and the inclusion of both robots from the anime, but the problem is that gameplay-wise, the dog is better in every aspect, as the Pelican has different properties and can't combo in certain situations. So if you're trying to win, you most definitely want to use the default costume. However, if you're in a tournament and both players are using Yatterman, a top tier character, then get ready to fight to the death for the right to choose dog. With the very little time I had with competitive CGoH, I only really had to deal with this once. But I ended up picking alternate characters anyways. With UAS, every character now has 4 color palettes to choose from, and the Yatterman solution was to give dog to every color. Pelican still makes an appearance in the game, but is given to the new additional character Yatterman 2 as her level 3 super. And speaking of additional characters, UAS of course had the inclusions of Tekkaman Blade, Joe the Condor, Frank West, Zero, and very lastly, Yatterman 2. And you'd have to beat the arcade mode with every single character to unlock her. Sadly, Hakushon Daimyo is the only character to be removed from CGoH, which was said to be due to licensing issues. But honestly, I feel like his character didn't fit in at all. While I still would have been happy to see him included in UAS, his inclusion seems like he's in a game all about Power Rangers, and he's Barney the dinosaur. His removal is also significant because the genie was one of only 4 characters who had a snapback, as it's not a universal mechanic amongst the entire cast. 2 of them are the giants, so that means Alex is the only normal character left with a snapback, strongly affecting his metagame. The game mechanics changed drastically, mainly because a lot of broken stuff was discovered in CGoH. Some quality of life changes include air combos adjusted to be more consistent, and the Mega Crash or burst mechanic sends the opponent flying away higher. One major change was the introduction of hit stun decay. For those familiar with how hit stun works in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, it's more or less similar in UAS. CGoH didn't have any yet, so everyone basically had jab infinites of some sort. Moreover, people learned how to combo off of burst in corner, and do combos that built meter back to combo into another burst, and so forth. This ended up being a main strategy in CGoH, as carrying the opponent to the corner and comboing off of a burst was super strong. In UAS, burst was changed to make it less rewarding to the user, as you can still land combos off of it in the corner, but the damage scaling is so extreme that it will barely make a dent in your opponent's life bar. Burst was also made punishable on block, rewarding players who can make a good read and raising the risk for attempting one. But in CGoH, for some wonko reason, the bursting player was made plus on block, so why the hell not? The Baroque mechanic had some cool adjustments as well, but the damage boost got nerfed a bit. The intended use for Baroque cancels usually involves sacrificing chunks of red health for a damage boost in combos, and the more red health, the stronger the damage. It still works this way in UAS, but they gave very significant benefits to sacrificing small slivers of red. One of my favorite additions is how Baroque is utilized in the air. Activating Baroque while you're in any jump state now lets you have another jump install, and it allows for great creative expression. You can get some cool air confirms, escape or apply some extra pressure, and even add some sauce to your combo. Even Alex and the Giants, who regularly only have one jump, are able to jump again when they do an air Baroque. It also helps that the UAS Baroque allowed you to act sooner after activation, which led to a utility that the developers most definitely didn't intend. Upon activating Baroque, it causes a freeze frame or a frame kill that allows you to act before your opponent. However, if you can manage to Baroque cancel a move that doesn't put your opponent in proximity guard, then you have enough time to throw out a move faster than your opponent can start their blocking animation. Hence, Baroque unblockables were added to the meta. You only have a very few amount of frames that a move can be, so it's only really used with fast normals like a jab. They're not that hard to do, and believe it or not, they're not really that game-breaking. In fact, I feel they added strongly to the meta, as it shook up the tier list a bit. And even though they're unblockables, they're not exactly inescapable. And you won't have to worry about being on the receiving end if you can play your meter game right. Burst is still a thing. Overall, they've been great for UAS competition. So if TBC ever gets a re-release, I hope they don't screw things up and accidentally remove them. Are you listening? Capcom! And the last bit that I wish they didn't remove from CGoH was the classic MVC2 style post-round actions when you press start. Let me beat up my opponent's dead body again, you cowards! Let's end off with talking about the extras. You may have noticed earlier, the CGoH version had a mode containing original minigames.
さあさあ祭りが始まるよ。参加者はぜひこちらの受付にどうぞ。
These can have up to 4 players using Wiimotes for some Mario Party-esque action. Each minigame is designed to be themed around each character, and they're unlocked as you beat arcade mode with them. While they're a fun inclusion, these minigames are mediocre at best. They have some cool presentations, and some are actually a good 60 seconds of fun, but a lot of them rely on wildly swinging the Wiimote or button mashing. They're probably fun to mess around with once with some friends, but there's not too much replay value in them. Although, for some reason they seem to have put way more effort into PTX's minigame alone. This minigame is actually the closest thing to being something real, and is basically a reimagining of Lost Planet as a shmup. These minigames are removed from UAS, but are replaced with an extra game. I guess the developers really wanted to elaborate on that PTX game, as it is now a standalone mode with ultimate all-shooters. This is now a more expansive shmup, with bosses, branching stage routes, and even a selectable character roster. In CGoH, PTX is the only playable character in this game, but UAS added the option to play as Tekkaman Blade, Ryu, and Ken the Eagle. It's pretty silly seeing these guys in this sort of game, and there's actually some replay value in this version, as playthroughs of this mode give you points to use in the game shop. So have fun encountering all types of acrid. Both versions of the game of course have a shop, where you have to purchase all the unlockables and view stuff in the gallery, like special art and music. CGoH, however, had fully animated endings that you could view in the gallery as well. While in UAS, we still get some fun written dialogue and new artwork stills, but CGoH had some beautifully animated, voice-acted ending sequences. They're completely in Japanese dialogue, but you can easily find the translation online if you're interested in viewing them. Some of them are really short though, but I especially love Doranjo's ending, as Team Dorambo and the Devilot gang interact in hilarious fashion. Last but not least, as I said before, CGoH is the one with the arcade release, but UAS added netplay. Not much to say about it because it's defunct and the netcode sucked, but it was there. Most all the players nowadays play Dolphin netplay, which is a vastly better experience. So, yeah. Well, there you have it. Pretty much both games in a nutshell. I'm still glad that both exist, as I believe the improvements to UAS wouldn't have been possible if CGoH hadn't been there to fall on that sword. And I do believe that those improvements made the development better for vanilla Marvel 3, which Ultimate ended up refining it into a magnificent versus game that we all know and love. I still continue to play UAS, and I'll continue to support both scenes when given the chance, even though my time is mostly focused on other competitive scenes nowadays. However, I'm sure I'll be there whenever TBC gets that strong resurgence from when someone is finally able to implement sticky rollback netcode. And if you're that person who could get the wheels rolling, come join the TBC Discord server. Talk to us. We got a community of people who are willing to crowdfund this thing. Either game, as I want both to continue to strive, but preferably UAS, because CGoH sucks. Thanks for watching, everyone. Do stay classy.